Hi everyone. Welcome all customers, non-customers and potential customers or people who are interested in e-commerce to this very interesting panel of demystifying logistics and warehousing. I have three esteemed guests from really reputed companies to talk about this particular topic. A small introduction for all three of them. I have Percy Awari, who's a regional manager South Asia RMX. He's been working with RMX for 21 years. Then I have a dear friend Debyendu Ganguly, who is a business head for cross-border trade for Shiplight. He's worked in companies like ShipRocket before. Then we have Richa, who leads the growth for cross-border for delivery. She's worked in companies like ICS Lombard, Godfrey Phillips, and OM. It's gonna be a half an hour session for all of you. My first question is for all three panelists. I'm gonna start with Percy, move on to Debyendu, and then to Richa. So, Percy, first question to you. What we've seen is a massive growth of cross-border commerce across the globe, and this has been accelerated due to pandemic, which in short term has led to increase in demand for logistics and warehousing. How do you see this situation as an opportunity to innovate? Uh, and if you can talk about few changes in process or product you've had to make in last few quarters or few years.
Thank you, Gaurav. The growth in e-commerce has revolutionized the physical distribution of goods in our last mile distribution in almost every organization in every country. With the pandemic, the e-commerce has seen an unprecedented boom across the world, with people moving from physical to the digital retail, whether it is on the retail side of it, or whether it is on the grocery side of it, or whether it was on the food delivery side of it. We have been seeing unprecedented growth almost in every organization. The diversification of delivery channels and the increasing range of services offered by retailers and logistics operators are leading to changes in urban flow patterns. More goods must be delivered, more destinations have to be covered, more vehicles have to be moving, and more complexities is being added into the system day after day. This recent growth has led to a significant increase and significant alterations to the last mile solutions being offered by multiple companies. We are seeing people moving away from the standardized last mile options into building crowdsourced last mile options, into building Pudo last mile options where the customer has a choice to either pick up or drop off his package at a given location at a given time of his choosing. We are seeing a lot of changes also happening on the technology side, with a lot of artificial intelligence and big data being used by multiple organizations to smoothen the last mile challenges. So, overall, I can say the pandemic, from a last mile perspective, has brought in challenges but has also brought in a lot of opportunities, which has been seeing an unprecedented growth for almost all 3PL companies.
Got it. So in short, if I have to summarize what we're talking about is it's become a forcing function for some of the players to actually go back, look at new channels, new ways to collaborate, look at AIs, MIs, and how can you really efficiently run your process and help the customers around. Great. Thank you so much, Percy. Debyendu, over to you. What are your thoughts around it?
Well, I think Percy has elaborated that in a kind of a large scale where the problem was and what the solution that all the supply chain companies are trying to bring in. So what we thought was we were looking at solving cross-border e-commerce shipments mostly, right? Where majority of the density from say a 50-gram packet to somewhere around 5 kg of a packet, where we saw a huge surge post-COVID. One main reason was the shortage of containers, right? Where the B2B movement, slowed down a bit. And we saw all new private labels, who wanted to, ship international. They were getting international orders, but they were finding it difficult in terms of because they were all new, first times they were doing. So we brought in a little bit of change in our normal way of onboarding merchants. What we did was we tried to reduce bottlenecks as much as possible and smoothening the entire onboarding process. Very simple 3-step KYC, right? And no kind of hurdles in terms of a kind of a security deposit of anything like that. Plug and play model. Every order you just prepaid and that's it. You were on the go, right? Because we need to save time because most of these sellers are like new sellers who are shipping international. We brought in also a kind of knowledge transfer to these new sellers where they understand what are the basic compliances required, not a whole lot, but the basic compliances with respect to their product categories, because the shipment should not get stuck at the customs, right? And there could be a smooth delivery, be it origin, be it destination. Apart from that, we also saw a change in a few compliances in European Union and the UK with the VAT registration and the IOSS. So we thought that, we could help as much as possible through these merchants, because these were mostly D2C brands, right, who are going international. We say that you focus on getting your numbers, we take care of your delivery, forget about the compliances, we are there to handle, and then backed by the technology that our software provides in terms of enabling all these things from a single place, right?
Got it. Thanks, Dipendu. I think my future questions, since you already answered some of them. Having said that, the takeaway for me is what we see is large set of new cross-border sellers coming in. How your company is really helping in ensuring that onboarding is seamless, easy, and they can without much investment can quickly get into business and run it profitably.
Right.
Cool. Richa, over to you. And I'm not going to ask you. A listing question here, but
yeah, I think so. Percy and Dipendu have basically both covered the majority of the relevant points over here, and especially it seems like Dipendu has actually taken words from my mouth, because I think both of, I think, what's happening is, and what's going to continue to happen is the growth of the D2C segment. And the D2C segment is not going to only be the large and the mid-sized sellers, but there's going to be a surge of the small. So both micro and the small enterprises now exploring the e-commerce exports mode. So everything that Dipendu said, they don't want their capital to be stuck as a security deposit or as a any kind of a payment guarantee with the companies. They don't want to have very complicated processes wherein they need to have somebody else to kind of even help them with the onboarding. And at the same time, we've also seen a number of sellers not really knowing much about the compliance bit. So a lot of times people are even confused about what is IEC and how do I go about that. So while the government is actually, providing a lot of incentives and they're making things very easy, I think, as companies, as logistics companies that are supporting the growth of exports for this segment, we need to also provide the tech solution, both in terms of onboarding, compliance requirements, and sort of like prepaid wallets and these sort of things. So that's the input, and I think, yeah.
Got it. Makes sense. I think. My next question is a little tough one, right? With the increase in demand, we have seen shortages of container, price of a container really touching the roof. First question, how are logistic companies first question all my sellers really want to understand is, when will this change? When will this high price of container, when will this come to some kind of normalcy? That's one. Second question is more around how are logistic companies actually able to manage this, and is there a way you can really pass on? Is there a tip you can give to our sellers to manage some of it, because it's directly impact the input cost for the customer.
Hey, so I think this question. Let me take this up. So about the first part, I think Gaurav, everybody is waiting for the answer to that. This has been quite fluctuating. The market has been quite volatile in terms of price and capacity both, and not only in terms of ocean, but I think, and Percy, Gaurav, please correct me if I'm wrong, but even the air capacity is getting hit now. However, the market sentiments aside, I think this is going to continue for at least a quarter, and at least a quarter, and probably we can start to see some, some relief in the market after the Chinese New Year. I would obviously love to hear other panelists' thoughts on this, because nobody has the answer to that, right? Because things are just changing on a monthly basis, if not on a daily basis. So that's about, where the market is and where do we see this going. In terms of how do we cope up with that, or so my personal view is, Gaurav, this is not a problem for only the logistics companies to solve, right? There are a number of stakeholders. For example, the container problem, the seaports are clogged, yes, but there is a container shortage, there is other equipment shortage, there is labor shortage. So, if you actually see, the US government is now coming up and figuring out how to solve this problem. So they're talking about making ports, for example, the port of LA and the port of Long Beach, they're talking about making it operational 24/7. The companies are also talking about incentives to attract more and more, truck drivers and the other labors for the warehouse operations. So my view is that this is not a problem for the logistics companies to solve. All the other stakeholders have to also come together, which is happening, but it's going to take some time to sort of solve this, both in the midterm and especially in the long term. I would really love to have other people's thought process on that, because as you preempted, this is the tough question to answer.
Gaurav, let me say, I wish I had a crystal ball to answer your question. Unfortunately, I don't have one. But the way I'm seeing it today, and it has been seen in India, it is being seen in Europe, is people are moving away from globalization to regionalization. There are new logistics and manufacturing hubs coming up and emerging. If you look at India, earlier in the apparels, we used to source a lot of apparels out of China. And the moment the pandemic hit, where the Chinese factories started getting impacted and the Chinese supply chain got impacted, we have seen a tremendous shift from China to our next door neighbors, Bangladesh. And today we are seeing a lot of volumes emerging out of Bangladesh into India using the land freight solution, which is not impacted because of this pandemic, and which allows the organization to plan their supply chain more efficiently. Taking the same example, Bangladesh had a lot of impact going into Europe. And just last week, we have seen articles where we are seeing European brands looking at regionalizing the manufacturing and looking at sources like Turkey and some other countries closer to their region to source their materials. So this pandemic is going to change the supply chain designs for a lot of organizations, and we will start seeing a lot of regionalization coming in and globalizations being replaced through this regionalization. So this is my take on the same.
Got it. David?
I agree with both of my fellow panelists. And what I would say is that we know the problem, but I think problem comes with the solutions, and the solutions which everybody is working on. And very soon we will see some kind of a solution around solving this problem, be it regionalization or globalization, be it from India or by the nearby neighboring countries, whatever it is. So let's be positive. I'm sure by the end of this quarter, we will see a lot of solutions around that space of container shortage and the surge in pricing.
Got it. Devendra, my next question is to you. If you can talk about how technology is helping logistic companies to serve both sides of the buyer and the seller side. If you can talk about any trends, any specific things you in your company or see specifically in India which is happening, which can really help our customers.
Right. So, of course, technology has to be the backbone. And I think all 3PLs, 4PLs, supply chain evangelists, everybody's working towards enabling more stronger technology-enabled services in terms of, making the entire supply chain look very strong at every part of its journey. So to break it down, we need to understand that, what our customers want, right? Because most of the time, what we see, the escalations drop downs from there, right? Be it the TAT being missed, be it the pricing, right? Our customers are losing orders because they think that, the price is too high or the TAT is too high. Customer says that, I was supposed to get my customer says that, I'm supposed to get this particular parcel in such time, but it has breached the TAT. How do we manage that? So those are the things which we are trying to put as a kind of a process and put across in buckets in terms of the entire line haul or the entire supply chain journey, and add that with a very robust ticketing system across lanes, right, or across sectors, so that what happens is as soon as a kind of a package is packed, all the service delivery, service level agreements or the service deliveries are mapped together using technology, and that information is passed on to our customer, so that they can track it, they can view where exactly the product is, so that the escalations could be managed, the TATs could be adhered to. If there is some kind of a deviation, right, our customers knows it before, so that the customer doesn't reach out to our customer and eventually our customer reaching out to us. So how do we minimize that? Those are the things. We also have adapted a lot of predictability in terms of using technology, using a lot of AI and ML features in our product that we are building on, wherein we could forecast a load properly, right? So we say that, this is the peak season, there'll be a surge in terms of packaging. How do we forecast them, and so that, the deliveries, be it the first mile, middle mile, or the last mile, is taken care, and we manage across all the service level agreements that we speak with our customers. At the same time, we are also enabling a lot of API based information flow, so that we minimize a lot of manual errors, and there's proper information flow at every interval. So these are the few things which we are inculcating in our technology. It is going to evolve further because we have taken a lot of learnings post-COVID, add them as well, and see that technology plays the most pivotal role in supply chain and logistics industry.
Got it. Thanks, Devendra. Positivity of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge next question, two questions of mine, and then, over to Percy and Richard to answer that. One is, where do you see opportunities for cross-border sellers to go ahead and grow their business? That's one. New markets, since you are in logistics, you will see the trends in terms of shipments. Where are they going, and what are the new trends there? That's one. Second is, we also see a lot of brands, and I think Richard touched upon this particular topic. It's not only SMB, it's also a lot of brands going ahead and testing waters when it comes to cross-border. So what would you be your suggestions in terms of their supply chain strategy they should have? So again, maybe Percy can start, check into over, and then we can go to Devendra.
Gaurav, very interesting question you touched upon. India traditionally on the cross-border has been a country driven with products going into USA, Europe, and Australia. That has been a traditional stronghold of brands from India. However, over the past few years, Middle East has been leading the global trend for e-commerce growth, particularly in the past few years. If you look at the PayPal data, 86% of Middle East consumers have made online purchases from brands and retailers outside their countries. And in 2020, in 2019, this percentage used to be 61%. So from 61% to 86% of people buying cross borders from Middle East itself shows the way the opportunity is growing just next to our house compared to shipping it into a US, Europe, where complexities of supply chain with this disruptions have got affected. If you look at it further,
I'm just going to add to that data. In fact, UAE has been a top 5 countries for exports for India in B2B also. So it's not only e-commerce, it's B2B is equally big between UAE and India.
That's right. Also, if you look at 2020, the growth rate was close to 36% in the MENA region. So something is happening right over there. There is a lot of opportunity over there, and it is just next door. So that is where brands and sellers need to maintain their focus and look upon it. However, having said it, although Middle East is a lucrative market, it is a very complicated market. So it's not as simple as it sounds. There are a few challenges when compared to geographies like Europe and USA. One biggest challenge is each country in the Middle East has its own legislative and regulatory ecosystem, which needs to be kept in mind whilst planning the entry of those things. Language and culture plays a very important role in Middle East as compared to Europe, USA, where uh, the commonly used language or preferred language is English. Although there are certain geographies which have French and Spanish, the choice to use English is extensively high. Whilst in the Middle East, close to a large percentage of population prefer having a look and feel of the site in the local languages. Uh, Another important thing to be kept in mind when it comes into the Middle East is close to 70% of consumers in the Middle East prefer to pay either in cash at the time of delivery or to have an online solution which is linked to their local currency. So that is another thing which needs to be kept in mind when you're planning an entry into the Middle East. Uh, as I said before, close to two-thirds of the population in the Middle East are not proficient with English, and thus interacting in the local language becomes very important. Most countries, most companies who have built cross-border site focused on Middle East have given a choice between English and the local Arabic language. So these are a few things which need to be kept in mind when you are talking about the Middle East market. In return, what you have is countries like UAE, where there is a 91% smartphone penetration and a 98.9% social media usage, or countries like Saudi, which has a 78% smartphone penetration and a 73% social media presence. And both these countries have a very high cross-border penetration. In UAE, the cross-border penetration is close to 58%, which means 58% of the products are bought from sites outside of UAE. And the same thing for Saudi is close to 65%, where 65% of the products bought by people in Saudi are from sites outside of Saudi. So there's a huge opportunity over here. The Chinese have already made a huge foray over here, where they have close to $10 billion worth of products being purchased out of the MENA region. And currently, India is building on this opportunity.
Got it. Makes sense. I'm just echoing what you're saying. A market which is growing at a pretty fast pace, a market which is evolved in terms of smartphone penetration, a market where people are willing to buy from outside the country, and a large basket size. Again, a big opportunity for sure. And China, we see sellers from China already doing really, really well, whether it comes to UAE and Saudi. Maybe that's an opportunity for our sellers to really look at. Cool. Over to you, Richa.
Yeah, I think everything that Percy said, he's the expert for the region. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, obviously especially for UAE, the Indian diaspora is growing and it's strong and it's growing, right? So we must have, all of us would have a lot of friends staying there. So there is obviously a pull for the brands, right? For the Indian brands. So that's one factor. The other factor is the high spending power, right? So purchasing power of the country. So everything coupled with the other points that you mentioned about high internet penetration, demand for cross-border brands, and these are not just Indian brands, but obviously all the global brands, right? So this is one of the biggest and one of the most interesting markets. But for a brand that has to enter the market, they want to understand how to play the market. So local, I think, is true for all the markets, right? They have a customer that is purchasing wants to see things in their language or in a language that they're familiar with, which is also something that Percy talked about. Similarly, payment option, right? So what is very interesting is that Percy talked about the COD option. I mean, would have loved to hear more about that, but that's something that probably is a very, very niche product to offer, right, in the market. So yeah, so I think this is a complex market. It's a very growing market, but we have to think about a number of things before the brand should look at these markets. Yeah, I think AU as a whole is also growing, right? So India to AU is also growing. In fact, I was just reading up that the governments are also signing. They have recently signed up a pact, and e-commerce is also one of the key, components of that pact. So I am sure that India to AU will also continue to be a very, very strong and a growing market. So my input would be India to AU and India to UAE and Middle East in general are the key markets that the seller should look at.
Thank you. Thank you. Dibyendu, last thoughts from my side.
Yeah, I think so far pre-COVID, 90% of the exports were managed by 5% of top exporters in the country, right? And we are seeing that trend changing, right? We are seeing a lot of private label brands who are trying to go ahead and manage exports, be it B2B or be it D2C directly from here. Earlier, when we talk about cross-border e-commerce, we used to see only 2 or 3 categories doing well, especially Indian ethnic, handicrafts, which are more of Indian in nature. We are seeing a change now. Private labels are understanding the demand for different countries, right? A localized demand. We are seeing Western wear getting now increasing in terms of shipments. So we are seeing these private labels are doing a deep research in terms of what the demand is for that particular country. And they're not just targeting the Indian diaspora. Now they are going ahead and trying to live up to the demand of the locals there. So this is a very positive change we are seeing. I'm sure with this, we will see more and more categories jumping in, do a deep research where you want to sell and understand what the local demand is and try to manufacture those kind of products and sell them across. And with that, I think where global cross-border e-commerce growing at 27% CAGR and the momentum would continue for a double-digit growth for the next 5 years, I see all positive things happening in this space, especially from India.
Thank you, Dibyendu. I think I can talk about this topic the whole day. But having said that, paucity of time will stop this. I really hope that our customers will got the pearls of wisdom from three of you guys and will have a very executable, actionable. I'll take this opportunity again to really thank all 3 of you to be here. I really appreciate it and have a great day. Thank you.